"You dare question me," he would shout, his voice booming through the house. "What I do outside this home is none of your business. I provide everything for you. Your only job is to be a wife and give my mother a grandchild." Once upon a time, in the lively village of Umaka, there lived a man whose name was known by everyone. His name was Zulike. He wasn't just any man. He was a trader who carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he had it all. Zulike was tall and strikingly handsome, with a face so perfectly carved, it seemed like the gods themselves had taken their time creating him. His pointed nose and sharp jawline were features that made heads turn. His eyes, bright and piercing, sparkled like the clear blue rivers that flowed through Umaka. And when he walked, his every step was graceful, almost as though he floated on air. To top it all, Zulike was rich, very rich. He owned 5 large stores in the bustling Umaka market, filled to the brim with imported goods that people from far and wide came to buy. His wealth was the talk of the town, and everyone admired him, but not everyone loved him. For all his charms and riches, Zulike had a flaw that was hard to ignore. He was proud to the point of arrogance. It wasn't clear whether his pride came from his good looks, his overflowing wealth, or perhaps both. He carried himself as though the world revolved around him, and he often looked down on others as if they were beneath him. Yet, none of this seemed to bother the maidens of Umaka. On the contrary, they were drawn to him like bees to honey. His arrogance only seemed to fuel their fascination. Every eligible maiden in the village dreamed of becoming his wife. To them, Zulike was not just a man, he was a prize, the ultimate catch. They longed for his attention, and some even believed he would marry them. Every night, when they lay on their mats, they dreamed of him, imagining his gaze and his smooth voice calling their names. In the evenings, when the maidens gathered under the sprawling udara tree to share stories and laugh, their conversations always circled back to Zulike. What started out as a time for joy and friendship slowly turned into a battlefield of jealousy and rivalry. The maidens, once united in sisterhood, now saw each other as competition. "I saw Zulike at the market today," one maiden would say, with a sly smile, her voice dripping with excitement. "The way he looked at me, I could tell he's interested. He couldn't take his eyes off me." Another maiden, rolling her eyes, would snap back, "You? Ha! Maybe there was something on your face, or your wrapper was torn. Do you really think someone like Zulike would notice you when there are far more beautiful maidens like me? You must be dreaming." The first maiden's face would twist with anger as she jabbed her finger at the other. "How dare you? How dare you speak to me like that? Do you think you are better than me? Let me warn you. Watch your mouth." Voices would rise. Harsh words would be thrown like stones, and before long, fingers would point accusingly. Faces would tighten with rage, and tempers would flare. What began as a peaceful night under the udara tree would erupt into chaos. The once joyful gathering would end up with the maidens shouting, crying, and sometimes even pulling at each other's hair. Their friendship, buried beneath the madness of their obsession with Onzulike. It seemed that whenever Onzulike's name was mentioned, peace could no longer exist. The maidens fought, not just for his attention, but for the dream of a life with a man who had stolen their hearts. The battle over who Onzulike would marry didn't end with a petty fight under the Udara tree. The desperate maidens of Umaka went even further, each trying to outshine the other and win his heart. They flocked to his home like flies, determined to prove their devotion. They cooked meals fit for a king, carried heavy pots of water from the stream to fill his clay jars, washed his clothes until they sparkled, and swept his compound until not a single speck of dust remained. Some even whispered amongst themselves that if Onzulike ever asked, they would gladly bath him. They believed these acts of service would convince him to choose them as his wife. But Onzulike, in his pride and arrogance, had no such intentions. He welcomed their attention with open arms, but gave nothing in return except false smiles and fleeting moments of affection. He slept with them as he pleased, careful never to make promises or commitments. The maidens, blinded by their obsession, gave their hearts and bodies freely, dreaming of the day he would call one of them his wife. Onzulike, however, had no plans of marriage. He enjoyed his freedom too much, relishing the idea of having any maiden he desired without the guilt of being tied to one. The gullible maidens didn't realize this, and so the cycle continued. Whenever Onzulike sat with his friends at the village bar, drinking palm wine and eating roasted meat, he would boast about his escapades with the maidens. His laughter would echo through the air, full of arrogance and self-satisfaction. "I don't even chase them," he would say, grinning from ear to ear. "They come to me. All I do is pick the one I want." His friends, equally boastful and shallow, would laugh along with him, slapping their thighs and raising their cups in agreement. "I don't think I will ever get married," Onzulike often declared, his voice dripping with confidence. "Why should I? These maidens are too many, and I'm having too much fun." He laughed again, and his friends roared with laughter too, never once questioning his choices. But not everyone found Onzulike's behavior amusing. Chinwe, his aging mother, worried day and night. Onzulike was her only son, the pride of her life, and yet he refused to marry. She watched as the years went by, her son growing older but refusing to settle down. His business flourished, his wealth grew, but his nights were spent in bars or with an endless line of maidens. Chinwe was deeply troubled. She feared that if Onzulike continued on this path, he might never marry, and she would leave the world without seeing him build a family of his own. One night, determined to take matters into her own hands, Chinwe called Onzulike to her hut. She sat him down on a stool, her face serious and her heart heavy. Onzulike, sensing her mood, grew curious. "Mama, what is it?" he asked. Without hesitation, Chinwe spoke. "You need to get married, Onzulike," she said, her voice firm, yet pleading. "You will not remain young forever, my son. You are my only child. Please, I want to see you marry before I die." Onzulike threw his head back and laughed, a loud, carefree laugh that startled his mother. She stared at him in disbelief, wondering what could possibly be so funny about her heartfelt plea. When he finally stopped laughing, he said, "Mama, I'm not ready to get married. Yes, I have money, but I'm still young. I will marry when I'm ready." Chinwe's face crumpled and tears began to stream down her cheeks. She raised her hands to the heavens and cried out, "Chimbo! My enemies are at work. Mbano. Zulike, you are my only son. I am old and tired. All I ask is for you to marry before I leave this world. Is this too much for a mother to ask her son? Please." Her tears and trembling voice pierced Zulike's heart. He stood up, unable to watch his mother cry, and wrapped his arms around her. "Fine, Mama," he said softly, his voice heavy with guilt. "I will get married. I promise." Chinwe looked up at him, her teary eyes filled with hope. "Will you really do it, son?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mama," Zulike said, nodding. "I promise." That night, while Chinwe went to bed with a light heart, Zulike lay on his mat, tossing and turning, sleep refusing to come. His mind was in turmoil. Marriage was the last thing he wanted, but he had given his word to his mother. The thought of breaking her heart again haunted him. Yet, the idea of giving up his freedom felt like a heavy chain around his neck. What had he gotten himself into? With the thought of his mother's words still lingering in his heart, weeks turned into months. Zulike carried on with his life as usual, often pushing the idea of marriage to the back of his mind. Then, one quiet evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Zulike made his way to a local bar at the far end of the village with his closest friends. It was their usual spot, a place where they gathered to drink palm wine, share stories and laugh until their ribs hurt. Since Zulike had told his friends about his mother's demand, he had become the target of their endless teasing. The moment they settled at the wooden table, Neme, one of his friends, leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "So, Zulike," Neme teased, his voice dripping with mock seriousness, "have you found a wife yet, or is Mama still waiting?" The others roared with laughter, slapping their thighs and pointing at Zulike, who forced a smile but said nothing. For once, his mind wasn't with them. His attention had wandered, his eyes fixed on a maiden across the bar, moving gracefully as she served drinks to a group of men sitting under a tree. She was beautiful. Her skin glowed in the fading light. Her eyes sparkled with a quiet calm, and her demeanor was so gentle that it was almost captivating. There was something about her that struck Zulike deeply. She was reserved and didn't try to attract attention like the other maidens he knew in the village. She was different. Chuka, another friend, noticed his silence and followed his gaze. "She's beautiful," Chuka said, nodding towards the maiden. "But she's not like the others you are used to, Zulike. That's Ugoma. She's an orphan, raised by her grandparents who are late now. She's a good girl. You can't play games with her heart." The words snapped Zulike out of his thoughts, but instead of brushing them off, he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. "Who said anything about playing games?" he asked, his tone unusually serious. "I want to marry her." His friends froze mid-laughter, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. "Wait, What did you just say? Neme asked, leaning forward as if he hadn't heard correctly. You, Onzulike, you want to get married? For real? Yes, Onzulike replied firmly. She's the one. Calm, innocent, everything I've been looking for. Mama will be so happy and proud of me. Chuka and Neme exchanged glances, still unsure if he was serious. But Onzulike wasn't joking. He had made up his mind. For the first time, he felt something genuine stir in his heart. It wasn't just attraction, it was love. When Onzulike approached Ugoma days later, her heart fluttered. She couldn't believe her luck. Onzulike, the man every maiden in the village dreamed of, wanted her. He was everything she had wished for. Handsome, rich, and charming. She felt like the luckiest woman alive. Onzulike wasted no time in winning her over. He showered her with gifts, brightly colored wrappers, sparkling jewelry, fine leather sandals, and the softest bags. He promised her a life of ease and comfort. And Ugoma, who had grown up with so little, believed every word. As news of their courtship spread, the maidens of Umaka were consumed with jealousy. They gossiped bitterly, their voices laced with envy and resentment. What does he even see in her? One sneered. You should see her. She's not even that pretty, another added. After everything we did for him, he chose her. How ungrateful he is. That's not fair. But Onzulike paid no attention to their whispers. He had made his choice. Months later, amidst a grand celebration, Onzulike and Ugoma were married. The villagers gathered to witness the union, but for Ugoma it felt like a dream come true. She imagined a life filled with love, laughter, and happiness. Growing up as an orphan raised by her elderly grandparents, she had often felt alone, but now she believed her only days were over. This marriage, she thought, was her reward for all the suffering she had endured. But Ugoma soon discovered that dreams and reality do not always align. The man she had married was not the man she thought he was. Onzulike's womanizing habits had not changed a bit. If anything, marriage gave him an added sense of freedom, knowing that he had fulfilled his mother's wish and no longer had to listen to her constant pleas. Ugoma, young and inexperienced, was exactly what Onzulike wanted. Not a partner to share his life with, but someone who could never question his actions or demand more from him. For Ugoma, the realization was heartbreaking. The laughter and love she had envisioned were replaced by loneliness and tears. It all began on a quiet afternoon when Ugoma was doing the laundry. As she emptied Onzulike's trousers to wash them, her fingers brushed against something soft and unexpected. She pulled it out, her heart stopping as she realized what it was: a woman's panties. Her mind raced, her heart pounded, and her hands began to tremble. It felt like a slap to the face, a blow she never saw coming. Ugoma stood there, staring at the item in disbelief, her world spinning. She had always believed Onzulike was a loving and sweet man. She didn't mingle much with the other maidens in the village, so she had no idea about the kind of man he truly was. Now, the truth was staring her in the face, cold and cruel. When she confronted him later that evening, she held the evidence in her hands, her voice shaking as she asked, "What is this, Onzulike? Whose is this?" But instead of remorse, Onzulike dismissed her with a wave of his hand. His tone was sharp, his face angry. "Are you mad? Don't bring nonsense to me. It's none of your business," he barked. "Only you know where you got that from. Please, get out of my sight," he shouted as though she had no right to question him. Okoma's lips quivered as tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. That night, she cried herself to sleep, her sobs muffled by her pillow. "Who did I offend?" she whispered to herself over and over, as if the answer would bring her comfort. But it didn't end there. Days turned into weeks, and Ugoma began to see the man she had married for who he truly was. He came home late, reeking of alcohol with a faint smell of perfume clinging to his clothes and lipstick smudges staining his face. Each time she dared to question him, her voice trembling with hurt and anger, Onzulike exploded with rage. "You dare question me," he would shout, his voice booming through the house. "What I do outside this home is none of your business. I provide everything for you. Your only job is to be a wife and give my mother a grandchild." One night, her questions pushed him too far. In a fit of anger, Onzulike raised his hand and struck her, sending her sprawling to the floor. Ugoma gasped, more in shock than pain. Her cheek burned, but her heart ached even more. She looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes, unable to believe the man she once loved had just hit her. "This is my house," he roared. "You will not question me." That night, Ugoma realized she was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Every day after that became a test of endurance. Ugoma felt lonelier than ever. The women in the village still envied her, whispering about her luck to marry such a handsome and wealthy man. But behind the walls of her home, she was falling apart. She cried in silence, her heart breaking a little more each day. When she finally became pregnant, she thought things might get better. Maybe Onzulike would change. Maybe the thought of a child would soften his heart. But things only grew worse. Onzulike was never there when she needed him. He stayed out late, leaving her alone to deal with her aches and cravings. When he did come home, his presence brought nothing but pain. His anger grew fiercer, his hands heavier. One evening, during another argument, he beat her so mercilessly that she lost consciousness. When she woke up, her body ached and her spirit felt crushed. The hope she had held on to for so long was slipping through her fingers. Ugoma tried to be a good wife. She cooked, cleaned, and did everything expected of her. But no matter how hard she tried, it was never enough for Onzulike. He still preferred the company of other women, and his reckless lifestyle continued. Desperate for change, Ugoma decided to talk to his friends. She begged them to speak to him, to help him see how much he was hurting her and their unborn child. She hoped they might convince him to change. But when Onzulike found out, he was furious. "How dare you discuss our private matters with strangers?" he thundered, his face red with anger. "But they are your friends," Ugoma cried. "I'm dying slowly, Onzulike." "That's not my concern," he shouted, before lunging at her like an enraged lion. He grabbed her, shaking her violently, his grip tight and unrelenting. Her cries filled the house, but no one came to help. Her neighbors, who once admired her, now turned a blind eye to her suffering. The beautiful, vibrant Goma was fading away. Each day, the physical and emotional torture chipped away her spirit. Her once bright eyes grew dull. Her laughter was replaced by sobs, and her hope dimmed with every passing moment. It seemed like there was no escape from the endless cycle of pain. One moonlit evening, Ulik strolled into the village bar with his usual swagger, accompanied by his closest friends. The air was filled with laughter and the sound of clinking calabashes as the men two stirred to life and shared exaggerated tales. For Ulik, it was just another ordinary night of drinking and boasting. But that was until he saw her. She walked into the bar like a goddess descending from the heavens. She wore a fiery red dress that hugged her curves, her flawless makeup enhancing her already striking features. Her jewelry sparkled under the dim lantern lights, and her skin seemed to glow as if kissed by the moon itself. Ulik's breath caught in his throat, his heart skipping a beat. He whistled softly to himself. He muttered, unable to tear his eyes away from the mesmerizing vision before him. His chest tightened as he stared, completely swept away. Then, she did something that shattered the world around him. She turned and looked in his direction. Her eyes sparkled, and when she smiled, it was as if the entire bar melted away, leaving just the two of them in the universe. Ulik felt a strange flutter in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. He couldn't think. He couldn't speak. He was utterly captivated. His friends quickly noticed his distraction. Chuka nudged him hard, bringing him back to reality. "What's wrong with you?" Ulik, he asked, laughing. Then, following his gaze, they two caught sight of the maiden in red. Their jaws dropped in unison. "Oh my God," Neme exclaimed, almost spilling his drink. "She's beautiful. I swear, I've never seen her in this village before." "She's not from here," Chuka chimed in, his voice tinged with awe. Ulik smiled, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I'm going to have her," he said, with a confidence that left no room for doubt. His eyes gleamed with determination. "And she seems into me too." The mayor frowned, shaking his head. "You have to stop this, Ulik. You are married, and to a beautiful woman at that. Think of Goma. Think of your pregnant wife at home." But his words fell on deaf ears. Ulik was already on his feet, moving towards the maiden, like a moth drawn to a flame. His friends watched helplessly. As he crossed the bar, his eyes locked on her as if under a spell. The maiden welcomed him with a warm smile that made his knees weak. She offered him her drink, and he gladly accepted, their hands brushing briefly, sending a shiver down his spine. In no time, the two were laughing as though they had known each other for years. Her voice was like music, and her laughter seemed to erase all thoughts of responsibility or consequence from his mind. It didn't take long before they left the bar, hand in hand, seeking a private space to explore their growing desire. They disappeared into a secluded room, where Ulik experienced a night like no other. Her touch was electric, her movements enchanting, and every moment felt like a dream. He couldn't explain it, but there was something extraordinary about her, something that made him forget everything else. When he finally drifted off to sleep, he did so with a contented smile, feeling like a baby cradled in bliss. But when Onzulike woke up the next morning, the room was empty. The maiden was gone. He sat up, confusion clouding his mind. Where had she gone so early? Why hadn't she waited? He searched the room for a note, a clue, anything, but there was nothing. The worst part was that he didn't even know her name. Frustration mixed with longings as he replayed the events of the night in his mind. He had to find her again. He had to. That night had been the best of his life, and he wasn't ready to let it end. Still tipsy, Onzulike stumbled home, his thoughts consumed by the mysterious woman. Ugoma sat on a stool outside their hut, her face etched with sadness. She looked up as he approached, her eyes heavy with the weight of her pain. But Onzulike didn't even glance her way. His mind was elsewhere, filled with the dreams of finding the enchanting maiden in red. He grabbed a cup of water, gulped it down, and headed straight to the bathroom to take his bath. As he peeled off his clothes, ready to wash away the remnants of the night, something caught his attention. He froze, staring down at his body in shock. His heart pounded, his hands trembling as they moved over his skin. His manhood was gone, completely gone. Panic gripped him as he staggered back, his mind racing. No, no, this can't be happening, he screamed, his voice trembling. He looked around, as if his answer might be somewhere in the small bathroom. But there was nothing to explain what had happened. His legs felt weak. His breathing quickened, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Onzulike let out a loud, gut-wrenching scream that echoed through the small house. It was a kind of scream that sent chills down the spine. He stumbled out of the bathroom, his face pale and drenched in sweat, running like a man being chased by spirits. His movements were wild and frantic, as though he was trying to outrun something invincible and terrifying. Ugoma, sitting outside their hut, turned sharply at the sound. She froze, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Onzulike, what is it? She called out, but he didn't answer. He didn't even seem to hear her. Instead, he ran past her, barefoot and shirtless, like a man who had completely lost his senses. Ugoma sat there, her heart pounding, wondering what could have caused such madness in her husband. Onzulike ran as fast as his legs could carry him, his mind in turmoil. His destination was clear, the bar where he had met the mysterious maiden. Surely, she would still be there, or he might get information about her. Surely, she could explain what had happened to him. But when he arrived, his chest heaving and his legs trembling, he found the place empty except for a few regulars. His eyes darted around the bar, searching desperately for her, but she was nowhere to be found. He approached the bar owner, his voice shaking. The woman, the one in red, where is she? Do you know her? The bar owner frowned, clearly confused. What woman are you talking about, Onzulike? I saw no one like that last night. Onzulike staggered back, his hands trembling. No, "This can't be," he muttered, his voice laced with frustration and disbelief. He ran to his friends' homes, banging on their doors and dragging them out. "Do you remember the maiden I was with last night?" he asked, his voice frantic. "Tell me, do you know who she is? Where can I find her?" But his friends could only shake their heads, their faces filled with concern. "We do not know her, Onzulike. None of us have ever seen her before," Chuka said. Onzulike fell to the ground, clutching his head with both hands. "I am finished," he wailed, his voice cracking with despair. "What do I do now? My life is ruined. My manhood is gone." His cries echoed through the quiet streets, and soon people began to gather, whispering among themselves about what could have driven the once proud Onzulike to such a state. Desperate for answers, his friends suggested seeking help from the village herbalist. They helped him to his feet, his legs wobbling, and together they made their way to the herbalist shrine at the edge of the village. The herbalist, an old man with deep-set eyes and a long beard, listened carefully as Onzulike stammered through his story. The man's eyes darkened as he shook his head. "I cannot help you," he said firmly, his voice grave. "The powers at work here are beyond my reach." Onzulike's heart sank. His friends exchanged worried glances, but he refused to give up. They dragged him to another herbalist, then another, and yet another, hoping anyone could undo what had been done. But the answer was always the same: a somber shake of head and a quiet refusal. By the time they returned to the village, Onzulike was a shadow of himself, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow, and his once proud demeanor completely gone. He retreated to his home, his mind consumed with despair. Ugoma, who had been anxiously waiting for him, tried to ask what was wrong. "Onzulike, what happened? Please tell me," she begged. But Onzulike didn't answer. He couldn't. How could he explain something so humiliating, so impossible to his wife? Instead, he shut himself off from the world. He stopped visiting the bar, stopped meeting his friends, and spent his days staring into nothingness. Desperation wrapped around him like a dark cloak, pulling him deeper into isolation. Ugoma grew more worried with each passing day. Her husband has changed so drastically that she barely recognized him. Yet, no matter how much she pleaded, Onzulike remained silent, unable to share the terrifying truth of what had happened. Each night, as she lay beside him, she could feel the weight of his secret pressing down on their home, suffocating them both. But what could she do when the man she loved refused to let her in? One sunny morning, Neme, who had been tirelessly searching for a solution to his friend's plight, hurried to Onzulike's house. His face was lit with a glimmer of hope. "Onzulike," he called out, his voice full of urgency. "I found someone. There is a native doctor I just heard about. He lives in a faraway town, and they say he's very powerful. If anyone can help you, I think it's him." Onzulike, who had spent weeks drowning in hopelessness, sat up slowly. His once proud shoulders were hunched, and his face was a shadow of the confident man he used to be. He had prayed for death to take him many times, unable to bear the shame of his condition or the thought of facing Ugoma, the wife he had wronged so deeply. But now, Neme's words stirred something in him. Desperation gave him strength. "Let's go," he said quietly. "I will do anything. I just want my life back. And so their journey began. It was long and grueling, stretching over days. They crossed 7 towering mountains, their peaks piercing the sky. They waded through 7 vast oceans, the waves threatening to pull them under. Finally, they arrived at a distant land called Izari, a place shrouded in mystery and ancient power. Deep in the forest, they found the shrine of the powerful native doctor, Omali. The shrine was an eerie place with a scent of burning herbs filling the air and strange carvings on the walls. Omali was an old man with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through Onzulike's soul. He listened intently as Onzulike recounted his encounter with a strange maiden, his voice trembling with fear and regret. When Onzulike finished, Omali sat in silence for a moment, his face grave. "The gods have seen your ways, Onzulike," Omali began, his voice deep and commanding. "You have dishonored your wife and broken the sacred bonds of marriage. You have lived a life of arrogance, taking women for granted and treating them as though they were nothing. The woman you lay with that night was no ordinary woman. She was sent by the gods themselves to punish you." Onzulike's eyes widened in shock, his mouth falling open. "What? What can I do to make this right?" he cried, his voice desperate. Sweat dripped down his face as he fell to his knees. "Please, Great One, help me. I will do anything." Omali stared at him for a long moment before finally speaking. "The gods demand 3 acts of redemption," he said. "First, you must seek forgiveness from every woman you have hurt or taken advantage of. Next, you must go to your wife and beg for her forgiveness. You must love her, care for her, and treat her as your equal. Only then will you prove your sincerity. You have 8 weeks to fulfill this task. After that, return to me for the final act." With tears in his eyes, Onzulike thanked the native doctor and began the journey back home. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of his actions, and it humbled him deeply. When he returned to the village, he wasted no time. He sought out every maiden he had wronged, looking them in the eyes and apologizing for his arrogance and thoughtlessness. Some forgave him easily, while others hurled angry words at him, but he accepted it all without complaint. His guilt and determination carried him forward. Finally, he turned his attention to Goma. One evening, he knelt before her, tears streaming down his face. "O Goma," he began, his voice breaking, "I have wronged you in every way possible. I have been a terrible husband, and I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to find it in your heart to forgive me. I promise to spend the rest of my life making you happy." Ugoma stared at him in disbelief. This was not the Onzulike she knew, the proud, arrogant man who had made her life miserable. His sincerity was undeniable, and though her heart was cautious, she nodded. "I forgive you," she said softly, though she still wondered what had brought about this sudden change. From that day, Onzulike became a new man. He woke up early every morning to clean the house, prepare meals, and ensure Ugoma's comfort. He pampered her endlessly, refusing to let her lift a finger. Every evening, after closing his stalls at the market, He rushed home with gifts, brightly colored wrappers, beaded jewelry, and her favorite snacks. They spent their evenings talking, laughing, and singing together. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Onzulike began to see Ugoma in a way he had never done before. He noticed how her laughter filled their home with warmth, how her smile lit up the darkest corners of his heart. She was not just his wife. She was a treasure, a blessing he had taken for granted. What had he been searching for in other women when everything he needed was right here? Soon, what began as a task to save himself turned into genuine love. Onzulike no longer saw his efforts as a burden. He wanted to make Ugoma happy because he truly cared for her. Ugoma too noticed the change in her husband. For the first time in years, she felt loved and cherished. Her home, once filled with pain and sorrow, now overflowed with laughter and joy. She couldn't explain what had caused the transformation, but she was grateful. Onzulike had become the husband she had always dreamed of. Weeks later, when Ugoma gave birth to their first child, Onzulike was by her side. He held her hand through the pain, whispering words of encouragement. When their son was born, he stared at the tiny boy in his arms, his eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Ugoma," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." When the 8 weeks had finally passed, Onzulike, accompanied by his faithful friend Neme, set out for the forest once again to meet Omali and complete his final task. The journey was long and filled with quiet anticipation, but Onzulike was resolute. This was his last hope, and he was determined to see it through. When they arrived at the shrine, Omali greeted them warmly. His wise eyes studied Onzulike, noticing the humility in his posture and the calm in his once proud face. "Welcome back," Omali said with a smile. "How does it feel now that you've changed your ways?" Onzulike lowered his head slightly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. It feels wonderful," he said honestly. "I've never been happier. My wife is the most amazing woman on earth, and now I see how blind I was." But he hesitated, a tinge of worry creeping into his voice. "I need my manhood back before she starts to suspect something is wrong." Omali nodded slowly, stroking his beard. "I see you have truly changed, Onzulike. The gods are watching, and they do not take lightly to dishonesty. You will have your chance to prove your sincerity." Omali reached for a small clay bowl and handed Onzulike 2 eggs, their shells smooth and pale. "These eggs will lead you to the one who holds the key to your manhood. Her name is Adamma, the spirit maiden you encountered that fateful night. You must seek her forgiveness, for she alone can restore what you have lost." Onzulike leaned forward, hanging onto every word. Omali continued, "Take these eggs and head to the forest in your village. When you reach the stream, halfway through the forest, break the first egg. A light will appear to guide you deeper into the woods. Follow the light until it stops. Then break the second egg and call Adamma's name 3 times. She will appear. When she does, humble yourself and plead for her forgiveness. Only then will the gods consider restoring you." Overcome with gratitude, Onzulike thanked Omali profusely and presented him with gifts. With a sense of purpose, he and Neme began their journey back to the village, their hearts hopeful but wary of the task ahead. The next morning, Onzulike prepared himself and set out for the forest alone, clutching the eggs carefully. The air was thick with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves as he walked through the familiar paths. When he reached the stream, just as Omali had instructed, he broke the first egg. Almost instantly, a glowing light appeared, shimmering like a golden thread in the air. It began to move slowly, waving its way through the forest. Onzulike followed the light, his heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. The forest seemed darker the deeper he went, the trees taller, and the silence was more profound. Finally, the light stopped. Taking a deep breath, he broke the second egg and called out, "Adama, Adama, Adama." The air around him shifted and suddenly she appeared. Adama stood before him, as breathtaking as the first time he saw her. Her beauty was almost otherworldly, her radiant skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the forest. But this time, Onzulike didn't look at her with lust. Instead, he dropped to his knees, his head bowed low. "Adama," he said, his voice trembling, "I have come to beg for your forgiveness. I have wronged so many people, especially my wife. I have been arrogant, selfish, and unfaithful, but I'm no longer that man. Please, have mercy on me. Help me restore my manhood." Adama's gaze was piercing, her voice echoing like thunder. "You have faced humiliation, Onzulike, but tell me, have you truly learned the meaning of faithfulness, love, and humility?" "Yes, I have," Onzulike replied earnestly, his voice breaking. "I now see the pain I caused others, and I regret it with my heart. I have changed, and I promise to remain a better man. Please, Adama, have mercy." For a moment, Adama studied him in silence, her expression unreadable. Then, she raised her hand, and a powerful gust of wind swept through the forest, rustling the trees and making Onzulike shiver. Her voice softened but remained firm. "The gods have heard your plea and have decided to show you mercy. Return home and take a bath. You will be whole again. But hear this, Onzulike. If you ever stray again, if you ever betray your wife or dishonor your vows, this punishment will return, and it will be permanent. No one will be able to help you. Now, go and do not look back." Onzulike didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled to his feet and ran as fast as his legs could carry him, not daring to glance over his shoulder. When he reached his home, his chest heaving and his clothes drenched in sweat, he grabbed a bucket of water and rushed to the bathroom. As he undressed, his eyes widened and a scream of joy escaped his lips. His manhood was back. Overcome with relief, Onzulike fell to his knees and wept. He had been given a second chance, a chance to rewrite his story, to be the husband Ugoma deserved. From that day on, Onzulike devoted himself totally to his wife and family. He treated Ugoma with love and respect, never forgetting the lessons he had learned. Their home became a haven of peace and laughter, and Ugoma finally found the happiness she had always dreamed of. The tale of Onzulike's ordeal spread throughout the land. a cautionary story about the dangers of arrogance, unfaithfulness, and mistreating those who love you. It reminded everyone, young and old, that true happiness comes from humility, love, and faithfulness, and that the gods are always watching. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this story, and thank you so much for watching this amazing story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please, I would love you to share your lessons in the comments section. Thank you so much for your love and your support. I do not take them for granted. Please, if you are yet to subscribe to our channel and you enjoy our stories, do not skip this video without hitting the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Thank you so much, and don't forget that I love you all so much too. Right now, I'll have to go and see you in the next story. Bye!